What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Sharpest Tool. My name is JRP, Joshy Red here. I am your host, and with me today is Nicholas Bosco. Thanks for joining us.
Hey,
again. Co-host. Here we
what's
go.
up?
Well, we just celebrated our 100th episode, so that makes this episode what? I think 101, if my math is correct.
101, baby.
So
101.
So many good nuggets back on the 100th episode. If you haven't already, go back and listen to it. And if you haven't already been a listener, a longtime listener, hit the like button and definitely give that subscribe button a little tap. We want to make sure you're continuing to get more of the awesome content set up by us here at Scorpion on the Sharpest Tool. But before we kick things off, Bosco, I gotta ask you. I didn't believe it when they actually told me that my brother was a construction site thief. And yeah, man, I didn't believe it, but when I got home, all the signs were there.
I was like,
where are you going with it?
Yeah.
You know what? The other, it's funny thing about my history too. Funny thing about my past. I used to be a drill operator, but it was boring. So,
okay.
Come on, those are good ones.
Oh, I love these.
We'll be here all week, or at least for the next 20 minutes. As you're,
we'll be in your ears for the next 20 minutes. Be ready for this.
There we go. All right, quick recap. Bosco, take us away. Quick recap. Last episode, we were covering a number of things, and we took some really cool detours, but I want to bring it back.
Yeah, the biggest, for those that weren't listening, haven't listened to the last episode, get it so you understand kind of where we're going with this, but understand what we were hitting on last week was about having a strategy, more specifically with paid advertising and really what that looks like. We started hitting on different nuggets in terms of what's kind of the foundational setup in terms of paid advertising, what factors do we look at in terms of that and how to set it up. We talked about having a client retained list. We talked about being well known in an area versus not in an area, competition in the market, demographics, geo-targeting, more specific on the geo-targeting about how to target an area based on population, budget. We started hitting on some of those things, and we talked about more about the business mindset too. Yeah. But going back into it, paid advertising, setting up a strategy, really where that goes. We got to crack the code here. We got to crack this code in paid advertising because it's always going to be evolving here. It always is going to be evolving. And you need to adjust.
And we want to give you some tools too, I think, on this. I'd love to dive into how do we future-proof the mindset, right? Because we've seen Google evolve over the years. I remember when I first got into marketing, right? Google Ads was just starting. And starts really picking up.
It was AdWords, I think, right?
AdWords, yeah. Pay-per-click advertising, evolution from branded ads on websites. That was the first kind of big iteration. And it has evolved so much. How they think about advertising on the Google side, how agencies think about advertising, how businesses think about advertising, how strategy impacts advertising. The intent of searchers over time has changed, right? What they're looking for changes. And that's all part of the evolution of just society as a whole, as our needs and how we go address those needs changes and evolves. So if we need something, how do we search for it today versus 15 years ago? There's been a lot of evolution, which has really been the advent of a transformative paid advertising program, specifically with Google, but Scorpion thinks about it a little bit differently than potentially some other advertisers out there in terms of how do we go attack this intelligently. So you mentioned a few things, just to call back. First step, where are you getting business? Where are you getting business today? And I'm not talking about broadly. I'm not talking about where you think you're getting business. I'm talking about where does the data show you that you're getting business? Are you getting business in Cambridge, Massachusetts?
Hit on that point. Yeah. Not where you think you're getting business. Yep. Have the data to support it. And if you're not tracking them, your leads or your book jobs coming in now, you better start tracking it. I promise you, it's only going to help impact your advertising.
That's right. Yeah, start there. If you don't have a good data set, start building one. Set a 90-day goal of building a strong data set, of understanding who your customers are that are paying dollars for you and where they're located, and then start building a data set to be able to see where your customers are located. This is just good business hygiene as you continue to grow. If you're a small op right now, this is great business hygiene to get you to the next level. Start there, because when you set up targeting, for your paid advertising, the first place you should look to advertise in is the area where you're already doing business. You got to think, remember, we're going to talk about this a lot and we're going to constantly come back to it. So be prepared for some repetition. It definitely doesn't spoil the prayer, as someone once said. And so let's make sure that we're thinking about this. Start where your current business is, because where you're known is where you'll grow initially, right? And as you expand out, there's strategies about how you make yourself known.
Yep.
Again, going back to our marketing funnel conversation from a few episodes back, widest possible audience, people who have no idea who you are and what you do. What's the first step?
Oh, yeah.
You got to get them to know who you are and what you do. You got to move them down that funnel, right? So when it comes to a strong paid advertising campaign, start by getting in front of the audience that already knows who you are and what you do, and that all of a sudden is in a place where they have a need. That's the first principle you want to think about when it comes to paid advertising.
And I understand a lot of business owners want to be aggressive and hyper aggressive. They're like, I just want to go for it. I understand there's a lot of techs that want to branch off. I get that. I understand how this works. I understand it. Yeah. However, you got to take a step back. You've got to really understand what he's saying here in terms of that. You want to make sure that you are hitting on the areas that you're well known in first. Take a step back, start tracking the data. You've got to do the work to get the work. And I said this before, you got to do the work to get the work to ensure that you're able to adjust your strategies over time. So do the 90-day set, really start small, focus small. I understand the hyper aggressive growth. We want to get there, but it's about taking the first step. That's what it's all about, taking that first step. I feel like, and this is a shout out to our Sharpest Tool team, who is the muscle behind this podcast. I feel like we need a quote card with Bosco's face on it that just says, do the work to get the work, right? Do the work to get the work. That's going to become the staple here. Yeah. So start off, where are you physically located? That's the first motif that you want to get down. Targeting, location targeting is huge. Does it take you 40 minutes to get to a job, or does it take you 10? Ooh. Does it take you 60 minutes to get to the job, or does it take you 20? People want people who are close to them so the response time can be quicker. People are looking for expediency. They're looking for, this is one of the reasons why near me searches across the web have increased pretty dramatically over the course of the past 5 to 10 years. This is huge to understand that trend, because that's what consumers have in their mind about what they want. So focusing on areas local to where your technicians are located so you can get to them quickly, where your office is located. So you're focused on where you're doing the most business. That's step one, location targeting. Step two, making sure you're going after the right services that you want to pay to get jobs for. We understand. We know you do a lot more. We know you do a lot more. I understand, for example, that for HVAC, you want to do air quality, AC repair, heating repair, replacement, installation, maintenance, service. What you go on and on and on and on. Well, what is it you want to pay for to go after? Yeah, you've got to, again, from an SEO perspective, you put it on your website. That's not a problem. By all means, put it on your website. We want people to know what you're doing. But from an advertising perspective that he's hitting on, what are the services that you want to pay for to go after? Yeah. Because again, if you want to go after all of them, it's going to cost a lot. But if you want to go after a specific few, the higher intent ones too as well, and the ones that you can close and work on to even upsell, go after those. Yeah,
I'm not sure, a little bit of sarcasm here, but I've never once met a business owner who's like, yeah, you have an open-ended budget, do whatever it takes. Most people are pretty pragmatic when it comes to the budget they're assigning. But yeah, it's so important too, because alongside what you're targeting comes expectation, right? There's always expectations, because if you think about it, search volume is dependent on the consumer. Consumers are they have a specific way that they approach their problems, right? Most people, for example, because you're probably hearing this, only go after what I want. I only want installs, right? I only want full re-roofs, right? I only want big ticket item here, okay?
Of course.
I totally get the mindset. So let's not mistake. Let's bring that back, because the reality is consumers don't think that way. Consumers think to repair something before they replace it. Consumers think to repair something before they replace it. So what's the entry point in? Most of your installs, not to say that you can't get installs, for example, or full re-roof or whatever from paid advertising, but most of the time that's going to come from you going out to a repair job and a technician building such a good relationship and cross-selling from that experience that they're having with the client, because that's the best thing for the client. And nothing trumps that handshake agreement in person, building a strong relationship, building trust with the client in person. And so a lot of times those bigger jobs stem from smaller issues that clients are trying to fix. And so it's so important from a volume perspective to make sure that you're in front of those smaller jobs. Also be in front of the big jobs, but in front of some of those smaller jobs that you're willing to do that can lead to bigger jobs. Because those smaller jobs are going to be the bread and butter, keeping the technicians busy, keeping them out on jobs. But they're also, if they do it right, this comes down to that conversion point that we talked about. Click turning into a call turning into a booked appointment, that booked appointment turning into revenue. The size of that revenue is going to boil down to the experience that technician provides in the house. Are they actually uncovering root causes? Are they trained and disciplined to uncover root causes, or are they just solving the issue at hand? Are they putting a Band-Aid approach to it? Are they cross-selling, identifying other things that they can inspect while they're at the house to be able to offer additional services based off what they've uncovered, right?
I'm going to use this as an example for you. For all the HVAC listeners out there, I know you're going to balk at this. I've got a unit. It's on the house. It's over 20 years old. Now, I already know what you're thinking. I already know what you're going to say here. I got to get that replaced. I know. However, as a homeowner, as a consumer, what am I going to look at first? Just like all the typical dads out there, we want to try to fix it ourselves. Let me see if I can fix this myself. It's not cooling well, right? Maybe it keeps tripping. Well, I'm going to look up some videos and try to fix it myself. But as a homeowner, I'm going to look at just to get a repair on it. I know that the cost is going to be great. Should I replace it? But we know the benefits of replacing it. It's new, works more efficiently, right? We know that. So the tech has got to be really good about informing the consumer on what the benefits are and how it's really going to impact them and save them in the long run. That's where financial options come into play, right? That's where installments, things like that come into play in terms of the finances, right? So you got to be smart about this, right? This all feeds into what we're hitting on for this episode is about the strategy in general, right? So it's about going after these keywords, knowing that the impact, you got to do the work to get the work. The impact is going to be great.
Yeah, 100%. And so let's step it forward now. You got locations. Super important to identify that. Be really clear about that. Now, is that to say, by the way, that you can't go into some of these areas that you're not as well known?
No, you can. You totally can do that. That's not a problem, right? If that's something you want to start expanding into and the budget is going to allow for it, and you've been around, that's a talk that you can have with your marketing agency.
But 100%. It's also recognizing the expectation that these areas where you're not as well known, typically they're going to cost a little bit more.
Cost more.
Because you're not as well known. There's something about brand that increases one's ability to click, right, on your ad above everybody else. If you're more well known, there's recognition there, right? There's an impulse to click on something that I'm familiar with versus something I'm not. And so there's often a good strategy in these areas that you're not as well known to also run social media advertising, video advertising, which we're going to get into in the next segment, but running these other brand building efforts to expand the brand name and create awareness and start to build some of that familiarity that drives down cost. So keep that in mind. But this is all part of the strategy conversation that you want to have to make sure that you're not extending your budget across too many areas to where no one particular area can actually drive impact for the business. How important is that? And how often do we see that where advertisers they run it so broad that they're not able to focus? There is beauty in focus and impact in focus.
It's the old saying, we're going to throw spaghetti at the wall and hope something sticks. That you don't want to do that. That's not the smart play. And I've seen business owners try to recommend that to a marketing agency or even us, where they say, "Hey, here's what I want to do. Just let's go. I want to target all this area." And it's not going to perform well. It's just not going to do what it needs to do to be effective. Here's another way of thinking of this. You touched on this last time in the last episode in terms about building the brand awareness, about going to a party, how well you're known. Think of it this way. As a business owner, you have a tech that has worked for you and with you for 20 years. You have a tech that has worked with you for 20 years. You now hire another tech that's been with you for 2 years. Who do you still trust more?
Yeah, that's a good point.
The one that's got the credibility, the one that's worked with you longer, the one that's been established. That is how your business is, and that's the consumers are out there thinking with. If you are established and you are well known, they will trust you. You built the brand. You built just like your tech. He built the brand with you. He or she built that brand with you. Yeah. So you got to think about that.
Love that. So all right, now we're getting into performance metrics here. Right? And this is your favorite topic. Bosco loves to geek out over performance metrics. He is a data guy. He's a data mongrel. He loves to build sheets. So let's break this down. A good advertising company typically is going to look at clicks. How many clicks did I send you? Right? And the reality is that's a bit of a facade. So if you're only getting clicks right now, Like if you're only getting clicks, question that, because it's a bit of a facade. Because I can run clicks, I can run advertising for people who actually have zero intent of actually picking up the phone to call you, and you're just getting a ton of clicks. And so, yeah, it looks good from traffic coming to your site, but it's not actually going to drive material results for your business.
It's just a piece.
It's just a piece of the pie. It is not the whole pie. So that's great. You definitely want clicks over to the website. You want visibility. You want brand awareness. That's one aspect. But if you're also looking at something that's going to drive business, you have to complement it with something that's more downstream. So what do you go? You go from clicks, then you turn those into calls, right? That's good marketing, is turning a click into a phone call. Somebody coming and visiting your website, your business, and they're saying, I want to pick up the phone and call. I am compelled to do that because I have the
terminology
right
is conversion, if you hear that.
Conversion rate. Yeah. Conversion. It's, hey, I came to the website because I have an intent and I have a problem that you could solve for, right? So my intent is strong because I have a problem and you can solve my problem. And I'm compelled now, based on the marketing and the messaging, to pick up the phone and call. In its core,
ring, ring.
In its core, marketing, all marketing is connecting the right message at the right time for the right buyer, right? Think about that. Right message, right time, right buyer. That's what at the core of marketing is that. So we want to get the business in front of the right client at the right time with the right message. So digital advertising, paid advertising is a big part of that. So a good company, okay company, in my opinion, not as great, just reports on clicks. Next tier up. Okay, we got lead cost now. How much is it costing per lead? But you see, that only gets us so far. Because if we're only focused on lead costs, then we have no bearing on lead quality. We have no bearing on whether or not it's actually producing something material to the business. And so oftentimes you'll see great lead cost. The lead cost is $20 or $50, or depending on how the company's reporting it. But then the material impact to the business isn't there. We're not getting the actual impact of the job getting booked.
To that point, because, you'll hear this, like, oh, we drove in 100 leads to your business. Everything looks hunky-dory. That's not the full picture, right? But there's got to be strong communication between you and whomever's doing your marketing, whether you have someone internal or an agency you're working with. You need to understand what those leads are actually producing, because out of 100 calls that came in, or leads or contacts, right? Whether it's through a form, chat, call, text, insert any way of contacting you, you've got to understand the quality, right? Because that's a huge factor into this.
Totally.
Are people actually having the intent to call you? Or is it spam? Was it a robodial? Was it junk? Was it employment? Insert whatever it was. We need to understand that. So those 100 leads means nothing. It just means nothing. It's a good metric to look at, but it's not the full picture. It means nothing without the rest of what we need to go over.
It means you got 100 calls into the business. That's great. I mean, I can outbound 100 times and give you 100 calls into the business, but is it driving impact, right? Here's the challenge a lot of people fall into, I think, with just focusing on leads. It can give the appearance of impact, but it's not driving impact. It can give the appearance of impact, but it's not driving impact. It's showing you activity, but it's not showing you impact. And where does that manifest itself? Well, I'm getting calls. I know I'm getting calls. The business is giving me calls. Well, what's it doing? Well, it's keeping your people busy. You're keeping your people busy. But let me ask you this. If you had less calls, but you were able to convert more of them, does that, yes, your people are taking less calls, but they're booking more as well. Does that drive material impact to the bottom line more? The answer really is, Now the question becomes, how do I get more of that? Right?
Yeah. Again, if you're going to get 100 calls, 100 leads, as it's noted, and you've closed 20 of them, retained client list we talked about is where it's going to help feed this. But noting that you've closed 20, or you drove in, say 40, 40 calls, but you closed 30 of them.
Yeah.
Big difference. It's a big difference.
Totally.
Okay. It's all about that last part.
I want you to touch on that though, since you picked up that baton, retained client list, right? We talked about it a little bit on the last one. We talk about it all the time here at Scorpion and how important it is. And sometimes it's really challenging for our business owners to get the information to us. Maybe they don't fully buy into exactly why we would need it. So let's talk a bit about that piece, why that piece is so important in connecting the dots. And Bosco, the spreadsheet master over here, has done some amazing analysis with this stuff. So why don't you break that down for us? Why is a retained client list so important and instrumental to clients who are partnering with Scorpion or partnering with any marketing agency, how does it close the loop, and what insights are you able to drive from that and actually drive different impacts on as you change campaigns up over time?
So when it comes to a retained client list, first and foremost, when we say retained client list, that is just all the clients that you have booked a job with or retained.
Yeah.
Right. So ideally what we're doing is people call you. So there's a way to track that, right? It's through a phone number, right? So you've got the phone number, right? From there, we're also going to be looking at job value. We're also going to look at their emails because maybe it's through a contact form, but we're also going to look at zip codes. This primary information gives us insight and data to about how we're going to go about attacking. First of all, we know, we touched on this a few times, having a zip code tied to the clients that you booked is now showing us, guess what, where your clients or your book jobs have actually come from. So we start to understand that piece. So if you haven't been tracking that, start tracking it, right? We talked about that in the beginning. Do that 90-day play of where you're going to start tracking your leads. You want that zip code information. Great. Now we know where, first and foremost, your clients are coming from. So guess what we're going to want to do? Start targeting that area. Why? Because it's going to start driving down cost over time. All right. Let's take a step back again. So the phone numbers and the emails, the information that ties it back to the campaigns and how they contacted you. So we talked about zip codes. Let's talk about job value as well. We want to understand the job value, right? Because every business owner wants a return on investment. They want to understand how their marketing dollars are actually working for them, right? Now, don't take it away as that, well, if I invest $1,000, I should get a 10 times ROI. That's not how this works, right? We already talked about the levers that are impacted. It's about the marketing side of it, as well as CSRs and the techs, right? But when we look at job values, we start to understand what the ROI looks like month over month. We can understand that maybe do we increase ticket cost, right? Do we need to start actually funneling things over to a different area? Are you seeing more installs, things like that? But we start to tie all that information to not only the zip codes, but we tie it to the campaigns that you're running, right? Now, we've talked about the client journey in a few episodes ago. Now, that one client that maybe booked and closed on a local service ad that you were running probably found you 3 other ways first, right? So we've talked about that. So we're going to look at, this is kind of like that last click attribution aspect that we're talking about. But having this list is going to give us visibility into where your clients are coming from, the ROI generated from those areas and against the campaigns, and seeing how your marketing dollars are being invested in terms of an ROI aspect. And in the long run, you're going to start to talk about a cost per acquisition or CPA. But we use this data and information to feed into the advertising to start making adjustments where we need to. Are we bidding on the right keywords on the campaigns? Do we need to adjust our targeting? Do we need to grow our targeting? Have we saturated a market? Are we undersaturated? Right? Those are the key factors that we start looking at with this information. So this is just a piece of it. I can go on and on and on, I promise you. But this is just a piece of it.
Like I said, Bosco geeks out on this stuff. You know, it's interesting to step back too. A really important piece of what you said, I think, is the fact that this drives decisions that we make about advertising. Mm-hmm. Retain customer information. When we're able to map it back to advertising, this drives the decisions that we make about advertising. And for what it's worth, Google's going this route. All the major players in advertising are going this route to try and understand that, because cost per lead, good. But cost per acquisition, that's material to the business. That's something that you can sink your teeth into. That's why Google is pushing hard on value-based bidding, right? Mm-hmm. How do we understand the value of the bid that we're putting out, or the value of the keyword that we're putting out? How do you understand the value truly and really to a business? You understand what's converting into jobs, right? Now, of course, all of that flows into how is the internal operation, the internal experience that we're running for a business. But at the core of the adjustments that we need to make for advertising to make it better, over time, consistently over time, that information is absolutely crucial to understanding which changes we need to make to which campaigns. As Bosco said, what are we going to open up? What do we need to close down? How do we adjust and evolve throughout the year? Because advertising and consumer behavior is constantly changing, and it's constantly changing throughout the year. And so this becomes instrumental. It's not even a question of whether or not it's a suggestion that you should be feeding this information to your marketing company. It is instrumental and part and parcel with continued success as the campaigns continue to evolve.
And there are so many businesses out there, and I understand you're holding this close to your heart when it comes to the retained client list. I understand it, but we want to stress the importance for any marketing agency you're working with, or if you have an internal marketing person, they're going to say the same thing. You want to look at your retained client list, right? The goal too with that retained client list and fitting it into those areas in the campaigns is you also want to build up your lifetime valued clients. Repeat business is so crucial to the sustainability of a business.
Yeah.
So when we ask for this, or any marketing agency, there's a specific reason for it, right? So please know this is to help better your marketing to work for you. You got to do the work to get the work, and that's what we're trying to help with.
Do the work to get to work. There it is again. I'm gonna close with a closing thought here. I've worked in hospitality for a long time prior to my career in marketing. And many people work in restaurants, and one of the things you learn in a restaurant really quick is you learn what people like and what people don't like, right?
Yeah.
And usually, I heard a general manager tell me this one time. He's like, the best place to drive efficiency in a restaurant is to look in the garbage, see what people are throwing away most of, and versus what people are ordering. And you start to see this manifest in orders. What are people ordering more of, and what are people ordering less of? And how do you optimize the restaurant's efficiency? You take a look at what people want, and you take a look at what they don't want, right? And the only way you can do that is to back that into data. So in a similar way, by understanding the intent of the customer, understanding which customers are actually producing the jobs, understanding which campaigns are producing those customers that are producing revenue for the business, that's showing you, in essence, what is good and what people want, what we need to do more of, and what is bad. What's the kind of the food that people don't want that they're putting in the garbage all the time. Let's get rid of that, and let's do more of the things that people like eating. And you do that, you're going to drive a lot of efficiency in the restaurant business.
You keep talking about food. I am hungry
I am
right
hungry
now.
too.
I am just feeling it. It's like
late on a Friday as we record this. Bosco, appreciate the conversation so much. I actually think we meat packed this one too. This was a lot of information in here. I think we're going to have one more episode on paid advertising to round out this series, so we can kind of recall a lot of the themes that we've seen through here. And it's just such an important piece, because paid advertising drives impact in ways that organically it takes more time to drive impact. And so it's super important to understand the distinction and also understand what you can do as a business owner to drive that impact. So next episode, we'll do a recap and a reframe of everything that we've been talking about. So if if you've missed out a little bit on some, be prepared for that episode, but definitely watch this back. A lot of nuggets in here that you want to make sure to take on. So thank you, Bosco. Appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you have any questions, drop them our way, but definitely hit the like button. Pound that subscribe button like you mean it, so you can continue to get more of this awesome content getting pumped out here by the Sharpest Tool crew here at Scorpion. And until next time, we'll talk to you then. Thanks.